The following is not my story, but my grandma's. The year is 1989. The location, a small town in the deep south. My grandparents were doing well, thanks to years of busting their humps by flipping and reselling lots of houses and stuff. In addition to working full-time and occasionally having second jobs, they're actually able to build their dream house by the age of 50. My grandmother had gone into business herself for a couple of years earlier. Even 2 daycare centres were thriving that they owned. At the time, my dad wasn't too far from retiring. He used to crawl inside machinery to fix it. My mum and aunt had left home for college in the military. I was only a few months old, thus introducing my grandparents into grandparenthood. My grandparents looked forward to retirement. They enjoyed frequenting a small restaurant in a tiny town about 10 minutes down the interstate from their community, pretty close to one of her daycare centres. It was a simple place and they served good southern food there. To this day, all the old timers still hang out there to drink coffee and talk about football. At the time of this incident, they had been going down there for several months and were actually regulars there. They were talking to some of their friends when one middle-aged man started talking with my grandmother a lot. She says that this guy seemed like he was completely normal and very nice. Everybody else in the joint seemed to like him, worked for himself, divorced, no kids, and he told her that he had also built a house that he'd always wanted, a cabin on a lake. He invited them to follow him out and look at it. Now my grandparents were, and still are, very interested in home decorating and building and renovation, whatever. But they'd always been intrigued by log cabins and considering building one as a rustic fishing retreat or something. Now the guy seemed knowledgeable, and having done it himself, he could potentially help them a lot with their next project. So they agreed, and they thought that if he was dangerous, there was 2 of them, so it wouldn't really matter, so they went along. Now the heavily wooded area that they followed him down seemed to get smaller and smaller and more curvy, until eventually about 20 minutes later, the blacktop ended and they turned into the dirt. She started to feel a little uneasy after several minutes on the dirt road without passing a single house. Finally though, they came up on a lake and followed his truck up a very long driveway. This place is beautiful. As they parked the car, they started to feel relieved and a little silly for being nervous. They got out there and suddenly noticed a terrible, almost overpowering odour. She looked around for the source and she suddenly realised that it was a nearby pine tree. She walked closer to investigate and saw a dangling limb from a rope, a dead animal, decomposed past the point of recognition. She then looked around and noticed that there was at least 10 more of these of different sizes in various states of decay, hanging in various places around the property. She stood there for a minute, frozen, looking at my dad, who also noticed. They then realised that the guy was walking towards them. They then briefly made eye contact and she said that he had the sickest, scariest grin on his face. She felt a huge rush of adrenaline as she bolted to the driver's seat of their Oldsmobile. My dad then followed suit and scrambled into the passenger seat, locking all the doors as he peeled out and began barreling down the dirt road in the direction that they'd come from. All the way back to the highway, they were terrified he would follow or come out of the woods at some point and try and cut them off. Or maybe even be waiting with a trap or even lie in wait for them with a hunting rifle. Luckily, they escaped without incident. Once home, they phoned the sheriff's department. They were then told that their incident would be looked into, but they never again heard anything back from it or even saw anything on the news. So this happened when I was in the 7th grade, a 12-year-old at the time. At the time it was just my mum, my brother and I living in a small rental in a rundown low-income area. We moved during the summer before the school year started, and we were welcomed by our next door neighbours, which wasn't really too uncommon but not really that common at the same time in Oregon. My mum worked every day from 8 AM to 5 PM, so my little brother and I would ride the bus home every day from school. My cousin would also sometimes ride the bus back to our house with us, and then our parents would pick her up later. So one day when I come home from school, I noticed that the small laptop that we owned was gone off the counter. I figured my mum had moved it, Later when she come home though, we determined it was missing and lots of other things went, like my iPod and wallet and my mum's safe that had a handgun in it. We then instantly called the cops and said that there was a robbery and they come to investigate. They determined the person probably slid through the doggy door leading into the garage and then entered through the side of our unlocked garage door. The cops stayed in their cars on the curb all night and would often stay there and watch the house for us. I was terrified all night and my brother and I slept in my mum's room. The next day, we locked all our doors. It was Wednesday and was a random half day at school, so I rode the bus home around noon. My cousin came with me, whereas my brother went to a friend's house for the afternoon to chill. As I got back, I used the key under the mat my mum leaves for me and my cousin, and then I hung out for about an hour and a half until she finally come back to pick her up. After she left, I heard the doorknob of the right closet next to the front door slowly open and out comes this skinny guy. He looked like he was a 35-year-old man that I recognised as our next door neighbour. He seemed to be constantly shaking with intense eyes. He had a really unhealthy look on him and he was extremely skinny looking. You could really see this on his face. I was terrified. I'm in the living room just standing there looking at him while he looks at me. He has a surprised look on his face. I think that he realised that everybody was leaving but didn't notice that I was here. His face suddenly changed to a smirk. That's when I believe he realised that I was alone in the house. He begins walking towards me. I stood there shocked, not sure what to do. He then grabs me really hard on the shoulders and tells me that I'm pretty. Next thing he does is tries to lick me. He seemed really crazy. He's staring at me with those terrible intense eyes. I instinctively jump back and buckle my knees to allow my full weight and force to rip into him, and I tried to headbutt him. He then bends down for me and I kick him as hard as I can. I used to play soccer at the time and I did wrestling so I could kick pretty hard. He then yells and falls to his knees, cupping himself. I use that time to run past him to my front door. I open it and I run to a kid that I knew who rode the bus about 6 houses down. He and his mum were actually there and they called the cops for me while I waited. The cops got to go through the house and he hadn't managed to steal much. I then given the police my statement that it wasn't our neighbour and they actually caught him the same day trying to sell our stuff at a pawn shop. He ended up being a crystal meth addict, stealing our stuff to try and sell and pay for his addiction. He was really weak from all the drugs and the abuse that his body had to go through. He was also apparently somewhat high when he come to see me. It's a bit creepy that apparently he watched us for months, learning our schedules for when we left and went home. He took the time to take the key from under the doormat just when my mum had gone and get an exact copy made so then he could put the same one under the doormat for my brother and I to use. The cops were surprised that he was smart enough to do that as he seemed almost dim and stupid. Either way, I testified against his physical attack and he got a few decades of jail time, being that he was already on parole for drugs. I was so terrified that I had to sleep in my mum's room for the entire year.
I really love Craigslist. I'd estimate I've met maybe 300 people for buying and selling stuff, and for the most part, everyone was nice and harmless. However, I did run into 2 creeps who made me rethink meeting strangers alone to sell stuff. For your information, I was an early 20s female at the time. First guy. It's 2009. I'm staying with my parents for Christmas holidays in a small town in Florida. I'm going through my childhood room and cleaning out the closet to find a giant CD holder full of maybe 100 really shitty CDs. I think Nickelback, Aqua, and all that sort of stuff. It's the 21st century, no one uses CDs anymore. I figure I'd try and sell the CDs on Craigslist. I put up a listing, 100 CDs from the late 90s and early to mid 2000s, mix of pop and rock, all for $35. The next day, I get an email from a guy named John around 2 PM. He said that he's in town temporarily and that he wants the CDs. He says he can pick them up after dinner around 8 PM. I email him back my address and number and tell him to text or call whenever he's on the way. 8 PM comes and goes. I figure I've been stood up, which happens often on Craigslist. No big deal. My dad works for a liquor company and would often do demonstration nights at restaurants and bars and would come home at a bar closing time. This night, he gets home around 3 AM. I'm in college and a total night owl. So I'm still up, probably eating junk food, surfing the web and watching horror flicks. I hear a car pull up, look out the window, and I don't see him sitting in his car eating food. He often stops at Taco Bell on his way home and eats it in the car, so my mum doesn't know he's cheating on his diet. Maybe 10 minutes later, my dad comes in and shouts my name. "Someone's here to see you. Can you please tell me why there's a strange man showing up at our house at 3 AM? Huh? I go downstairs, and my dad says some guy pulled up in the driveway and asked me by name. I walk outside with my dad, and this guy who's maybe mid-30s gets out his car. He says he's the craziest guy who wanted to buy my CDs. My dad goes back in the house. I tell the guy it's really late to be stopping by, especially without texting first. However, since I'm awake, I go grab the CDs. He then proceeds to drone on about why he's buying the CDs. He says he's engaged to a woman who he loves very much, and all he wants to do is make her happy. He said that last week, someone broke into her car and stole all her CDs. She was really upset, and he wanted a bunch of CDs she used to have. Weird thing is, I didn't list any artists or bands because I was lazy, but I didn't think much about that at the time. Anyway, he said he was getting it for her for a Christmas surprise. He said he was staying with his future in-laws somewhere nearby, and their family barbecue ran really late, which is why he never made it at 8 PM. By this point, I've lost interest and say something along the lines of, "That's sweet, next time you should probably call or text either the Craigslist instead of just showing up." I hand him the CDs, he hands me cash, and I go back inside. 3 days later, I start getting texts from an unknown number. "Hey, I don't know my way around this town. Care to tour guide? I could really use a massage. Where can I get a massage in this town? You're Asian, do you massage? Would you take $40 for 1 hour? Happy ending." Me, finally texting back. "Who the fuck is this?" Him, "Oh sorry, I bought the CDs from you the other day. Do you squirt?" I didn't respond obviously. I show my friends that night and we laugh it off. Then the next day I get more texts. "I still have your address. I'm at the Bank of America near your neighbourhood. I just got $40 babe. Only 3 minutes away, are you home? Why are you ignoring me? I'm almost here." I immediately run downstairs to tell my dad and mum. It was night time, so we shut off all the lights outside and inside my house. My mum, little brother and I went in my parents' room in the back of the house. My dad hid behind the curtains of the front bay window with a shovel in his hand. A few minutes later, I heard him run down the front hallway, fling the front door open and run outside. We heard some faint shouting, so we all walked out of the bedroom. By that time, my dad came back in with a shovel, his face red and his hair all messed up. Apparently, the guy came driving down our street really slow. My dad recognised the car and went running outside with the shovel, yelling obscenities at the guy. The guy peeled off and never came back or texted me again. So here's my story about the second guy. I was moving from Florida to DC and was going to load up my car as much as I could with stuff. However, I lived on the 3rd floor plus a bit of a walk from my assigned parking lot, so I figured I could use some help. I posted an ad on Craigslist gigs. I said I was looking for someone to help me load some heavy items like TVs, desks, etc. in my car. Less than an hour's worth of work, and I'd pay $45 or whatever. I give the very first responder my number and address, and he shows up. He was probably 5'8", 350 pounds of pure fat. The sweat and smell coming off this guy in the Florida heat was pretty nauseating, but I didn't care as long as he did the job right. While he was carting heavy stuff, I was loading lighter things. Whenever I'd go upstairs to grab another load, he'd hurry after me so he could walk up the stairs behind me. I had the door propped open, so he didn't have to worry about me needing to unlock the door first or anything. When he'd follow me up the stairs, he'd make these weird grunting noises, like and I'd assume it was because he was out of shape. Eventually, he's loaded everything properly, save for some sweat smears on my stuff. I pay him, and he drives off. I go back in my place and finish loading and cleaning. I go out maybe 45 minutes later to put another load in my car, and I see his truck is back, parked across the street from mine. He's sitting in the driver's seat, looking at me. When he sees me notice him, he looks away. I walk over to his window and knock. He rolls it down, and I asked if he needs any help or if he was lost. I was really confused as to why he'd come back, and I knew he didn't live near me. He didn't say anything, he just rolled his window back up and drove off. Okay, whatever. Of course, 5 minutes later, my phone starts blowing up. I didn't recognise the number, so I didn't answer the calls. Then texts start rolling in. Him, I bet you taste salty and sweet. Me, who's this? Him, you know what. Him, what are you up to tonight? Can I come back over? I get this sinking feeling it's the Craigslist guy. He had never called me about the job when I gave him the number, so I didn't know what his number was. Him, I like your pink panties. I then realised he was looking up my dress when I was walking up the stairs. I immediately feel like a total idiot for wearing a dress that day. He then started dialing my number over and over again. I didn't know how to do the block number thing through Sprint, so I just had to turn my phone off. Later, I was with my guy friend grabbing a bite and turned my phone back on. I got another text from the guy about how he wanted to toss me around like a ragdoll and tie me up and make me beg for it. I showed the text to my friend and tell him the story. The Craigslist creep proceeds to then start blowing up my phone again. So my friend answers and said he's going to cut his knob off and feed it to the dog if he ever contacts me again. I moved the next day, so I never had to worry about him randomly showing up in his truck again. Since then, I've brought and sold stuff on Craigslist, but I've always made people meet me at a public place before. I also stalk people's email addresses, Google Plus accounts, etc.
This happened many years ago, and I still can't figure it out to this day. I guess this is technically my mum's story, but it's one of the most scary things that I remember from my childhood. My parents were divorced, so I was living with my single mum and brother. My brother had just left for the military, so it was just my mother and I. My bedroom was downstairs, and her bedroom was upstairs, pretty much at the complete opposite ends of the house to each other. So around 1 or 2 in the morning, I woke up to the sound of her screaming and the sound of somebody running downstairs. She ran into my room. Although this was about 22 years ago, I still remember it very vividly, especially the look of absolute terror across her face. My mum had been woken up to the sound of her porch door being opened. She looked over half asleep and she saw a man that she had never seen before walking into her bedroom. She told me that he was completely soaked from head to toe in water and wearing nothing but a swimming suit. We didn't have a pool. None of our neighbours had pools, and there were no bodies of water or lakes nearby. I know this for a fact because as an 11-year-old growing up in New York, being friends with the kid that had a pool was a priority, and the closest friend with a pool was literally 2 miles away. She was obviously freaked out of her mind, and she said that as she jumped up from her bed, he grinned at her and started taking off his clothes. She then sprinted out of the bedroom, slamming the door shut behind her. She ran down the stairs into my room. Now looking back, I have no idea why the hell I didn't even question this, or why my mother let me do this, but instead of calling the cops, we just stayed locked in my bedroom. My mum quickly grabbed my BB gun, and then slowly walked up the stairs with the BB gun in hand. My mum had called the cops at this point, but I didn't know it. Shaking uncontrollably, I stared at the closed door for about 2 minutes trying to listen to sounds. Finally, with my BB gun drawn, I flung the door open, and thank God he wasn't there. The porch door was wide open though, and there was a soaked bathing suit in the middle of the floor. At that point, I went back downstairs and sat with her in my locked bedroom waiting for the cops. They got there surprisingly quickly and were just as confused as we were. They then investigated outside and confirmed that there were wet spots where the guy had been standing for God knows how long, collected the bathing suit, and they told us that they would start patrolling the area for the rest of the night and the next few days. Now, I've never heard anything about this. I guess the guy never got caught, who knows, but the next day my mum agreed that it was time to get a dog that I'd been begging for, so at least that worked out.
I have a very stable job, and a very good one at that, but sometimes you need extra money, right? I am currently moving into a newer, bigger and nicer apartment, so I've been putting down payments and using money to move. By no means am I broke, but it's nice to earn some extra cash. I thought of selling some clothes that I never wear. I've already donated a lot of older clothes to the Salvation Army, but for the clothes that I never wore and are worth some good cash, I decided to sell over Craigslist and Let's Go app. Let's Go app has never failed me. Craigslist, well, I've never tried it before, but my friends had some great experiences. I was trying to sell a very cute, short sleeve, black and white flower dress for $12. I put my number down so I could just talk to people directly, since I don't use email too often. Side note, I posted a picture of me in the dress that my friend took, not showing my face and with a blank white background behind me. I got a text a couple of hours after I posted the dress. Here's how the conversation went. Stranger: hey, I saw your dress on sale, is it still available? Me: yes it is. Stranger: it's kind of hard to see the dress in the picture you've posted. Do you have any more pictures of you in the dress? Bearing in mind, I have also sent a picture of the dress on a hanger. One picture close up for detail, one to see the full dress. Stranger: I asked for pictures with you in it. I'll just look on the ad tomorrow. I never responded back to that one. It was very alarming to have someone talk to me like that. Why would someone want to see me in the dress? I mean, I guess I understand, but really? 2 days later, I get a weird phone call at 7:05 AM. By the way, this was my day off, and I usually keep my ringer on because I'm always on call. To see that it wasn't work and an unknown caller, I was pretty pissed, so I let it ring. They call again right after. I sighed and cleared my throat to answer. Me: hello? A raspy, gargled man's voice answered me back. Stranger: hello. Yes, hello. Are you the one selling the dress? Me: yeah, I am. Stranger: I'm calling for my wife. I have some questions. In my head I'm like, what the hell? But I just go with it. Stranger: my name is Mark, and yours? I give him my name, but he fails many times, and also makes me think, dude, am I being prank called? It was pretty frustrating because I told him and spelled out my name about 20 times. We get over inductions and he gets into the questioning. Mark: is this a thick dress? Me: yeah, it is. Mark: can this be worn as a fancy dinner dress? Me: it can be. You can dress it casual or dressed up. Mark: okay. How tall are you? Me: I'm 5'3". Mark: okay, so my wife's pretty short and around your height. Do you wear a bra with the dress? Me: she can wear it with or without. Mark continues to push if I've worn a bra in the dress. I get short with my answers. Mark: where are you right now? I feel like I've woken you up. Me: I decide to lie to cover myself. Yeah, I'm at a friend's currently. Mark: a friend's? Me: a friend's. I'm just not home, okay? Mark: but did you sleep in the same bed as her? Me: can we move on? I'm not home right now. His phone cuts out and he calls back a minute later. Sorry, my phone dies. So anyway, what size cup are you? Me: excuse me, I don't feel comfortable answering this. Mark: B or C? Me: I'm not answering this. Mark: you look big breasted, very gifted. My wife has an ass, do you? Me: I don't want to answer this, but you're making me feel uncomfortable. I'm going to hang up. Mark: does your dress right up the back? When you walk, does it show your ass? At that moment I hung up. He decided to call me over and over, and it's not like I can block this number because it was unknown. By the 20th call, I answered to tell him off. Me: I don't feel like selling. At that moment, he interrupted. You know, I know where you live. I want that dress. I hung up and cried. I didn't know what to do. I don't know what to do. I would understand if a guy wants a dress for his own pleasure, sexual or not, but at least tell me and not act like his wife needs one. Or does he have a wife? Why couldn't she call me herself? I don't know. I have so many questions. I'm legit scared and this number won't stop calling me. I even got an email that's not related to this guy, named Mr. Anonymous, asking for smelly old flats. Is this normal for Craigslist?
So basically, One night about 2 years ago, me and two of my girlfriends were driving home from getting Mexican food. We saw red and blue lights right behind us. Assuming it was the police, Amy, who was driving, didn't feel safe enough pulling over as we were in the middle of the road, and she said that there were none near us that had street lamps, so we just continued on. Ashley come to a conclusion that it couldn't have been a real police car. Behind us it looked more like an old crappy car. The car then started to speed up and passed us on the opposite lane. We decided to call 911 and ask the dispatcher to confirm if there are any squad cars here. She then told us that there were no cars in our current location. She told us to stay on the phone and that somebody was coming right away. The car then tried to cut us off and pass again. Finally, a real police car came. We pulled over, but the other car sped off and was chased by the real police. We never found out what actually happened or who they were. See, I come home maybe at 2 in the morning from a run. All the lights in the house had been turned off, which wasn't unusual, so I decided to take a shower, make something to eat, then lay in the living room to browse through my phone for a couple of hours. But when I got to the kitchen, the fridge was open. So were the cabinets, and cups and bowls were all over the counters. I thought to myself that maybe I just left this stuff out, which wasn't uncommon for me. For an added note, I live in a small apartment with 2 bathrooms and 2 bedrooms. Each bedroom is opposite from one another. So it's about 5 in the morning, still dark, and I hear footsteps outside the door and it suddenly creaks open. I didn't pay too much attention to it since I have a cat who often pushes on the door to get it open. But the door slowly crept to an apex point inside the bedroom wall. Still weird, and I didn't really think of it at the time. That was until somebody came rushing out of the bathroom, running past me while I was sitting on the couch, running towards the front door. They swung it open and then slammed it shut. So for literally 3 hours, somebody was in my apartment and I had no idea they were there or what their intentions were.